All right, we're on the record in State of Ohio Plaintiff versus George Washington Wagner IV, case number 2018 CR 155. The defendant is present in court with his attorneys John Parker and Richard Nash. The state is represented by prosecuting attorney Rob Junk and special prosecuting attorneys Angela Canepa and Andrew Wilson. Also, special agent Ryan Scheider of the Ohio BCI&I is also present. We've been informed that the jury that's been deliberating all day have reached a verdict. Is the state ready to have the jury brought up for announcement of the verdict?
We are, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready?
Yes.
All right, bring that. You may be seated. Yeah, they should be brought up. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
Yes.
Would the foreman please, or foreperson please hand the verdict forms to the bailiff here? There. I will now read each individual verdict. And after I've read each verdict form, I will ask the jury whether this is your verdict. And you should respond if it is. You should stand up and make it known to the court if it is not. All do appear to have all 12 signatures on every place that we would expect the jury to sign their verdict. Verdict as to count 1, it says, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 1 of the indictment. It says, we, the jury, further find that the state of Ohio did prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, while committing the murder as charged in count 1, have a firearm on or about his person or under his control, as alleged in count 1, and specification 1 to count 1. It says, we further find that the state of Ohio did prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant displayed the firearm, indicated that he possessed the firearm or used the firearm to facilitate the said offense of aggravated murder as charged in count 1 of the indictment, as alleged in specification 2 to count 1. It says, we further find that the state of Ohio did prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the firearm the defendant had on or about his person or under his control while committing the offense of aggravated murder as charged in count 1 of the indictment was equipped with a firearm, muffler, or suppressor as alleged in specification 3 to count 1. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. Now, I'm going to shortcut a little bit on the next one, and the next few, but verdict, this verdict form states, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 2 of the indictment. And on the specifications, all 3 specifications are also found to be true by the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. As to count 3, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 3 of the indictment. All 3 specifications are also found with respect to count 3. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. As to count 4, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 4 of the indictment. All 3 specifications are also found to be true by the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. Verdict as to count 5, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 5 of the indictment. All 3 specifications as to count 5 are also found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. As to count 6, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 6 of the indictment. All 3 specifications are also found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. As for count 7, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 7 of the indictment. All 3 specifications as to count 7 are also found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. Verdict as to count 8, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner, is guilty of aggravated murder as charged in count 8 of the indictment. All 3 specifications to count 8 are also found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Yes. As to count 9, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of conspiracy as charged in count 9 of the indictment. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict as to count 9? Yes. Verdict as to count 10, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated burglary as charged in count 10 of the indictment, and all 3 specifications as to count 10 are found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict?
Yes.
Verdict as to count 11, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated burglary as charged in count 11 of the indictment. All three specifications as to count 11 are also found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict as to count 11?
Yes.
Verdict as to count 12, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated burglary as charged in count 12 of the indictment. All three firearm specifications are found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict?
Yes.
As to count 13, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of aggravated burglary as charged in count 13 of the indictment, with all three specifications as to count 13 found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen, is that your verdict as to count 13?
Yes.
As to count 14, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of unlawful possession of dangerous ordnance as charged in count 14 of the indictment, with the two specifications as to count 14 found to be true. Is that your verdict, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, with respect to count 14?
Yes.
Count 15, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 15 of the indictment. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict? Count 16, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 16 of the indictment. Is that your verdict, ladies and gentlemen, with respect to count 16?
Yes.
Count 17, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 17 of the indictment. Is that your verdict with respect to count 17?
Yes.
Count 18, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner, is guilty of forgery as charged in count 18 of the indictment. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict with respect to count 18?
Yes.
Verdict of guilty as to count 19, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of unauthorized use of property as charged in count 19 of the indictment. Ladies and gentlemen, is that your verdict with respect to count 19? Verdict as to count 20, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of interception of wire, oral, or electronic communications as charged in count 20 of the indictment. Ladies and gentlemen, is that your verdict as to count 20?
Yes.
Count 21, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner, is guilty of obstructing justice as charged in count 21 of the indictment. The additional findings are this has been the additional findings circle that the crime or crimes for which the defendant intended to hinder the apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of another, or for which the defendant intended to assist another to benefit from the commission of, are aggravated murder, aggravated burglary, conspiracy, unlawful possession of dangerous ordnance, tampering with evidence, forgery, unauthorized use of property, interception of wire, oral, or electronic communications, or engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity. Those have all been circled. This form does not circle. However, there's an indication here, we, the jury, further find that the state of Ohio did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that at least one of the crimes for which the defendant intended to hinder the apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of another, or at least one of the crimes for which the defendant intended to assist another to benefit from the commission of, is a felony. So that is not circled. Was that an intentional thing? All right. So I don't know how
You
the...
need that.
I'm sorry?
The did or did not?
Yes.
Yeah,
Did-
that's unintentional.
I'm sorry.
Unintentional.
Okay, so there was an intention to circle one of those?
Correct.
All right, and it's not. So how do we need to send them back down to the jury room to do that?
Yeah.
We could have them retired out here. Said, I'll read the last one. We'll probably ask the jury to go back to the jury room for the purposes of completing that form, but let me read the verdict as to count 22 first. The count 22 reads, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity as charged in count 22 of the indictment, and all three specifications as to count 22 are found to be true. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is that your verdict with respect to count 22? Yes. All right. Terry, do you want to have them go back down to the jury room? There's a spot on here where they are supposed to make a finding right there and express it on the jury form. Let's have them do that. See that they're brought immediately back up after they've done that. They should just stay in place. Please be seated. All right. Again, the verdict with respect to count 21 states, we, the jury, find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, George Washington Wagner IV, is guilty of obstructing justice as charged in count 21 of the indictment. As to the additional findings, it states, we, the jury, further find that the state of Ohio did prove beyond a reasonable doubt that at least one of the crimes for which the defendant intended to hinder the apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of another, or at least one of the crimes for which the defendant intended to assist another to benefit from the commission of is a felony. We, the jury, further find beyond a reasonable doubt that the following is or are the crime or crimes for which the defendant intended to hinder the apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of another, or for which the defendant intended to assist another to benefit from the commission of. And circled there, and the instruction was to circle all that applies, circle all in the brackets below that conform to your findings. What they have circled is aggravated murder, aggravated burglary, conspiracy, unlawful possession of dangerous ordnance, tampering with evidence, forgery, unlawful use of property, interception of wire, oral, or electronic communications, and engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, is that your verdict as to count 21 in your findings? Does counsel for either the state or the defense wish to have the jury polled?
On behalf of the state, we do not. Yes,
Uh, Do I have, well, let me, I can't see your jury numbers. Maybe if you hold them up there for me. Let me ask juror number A194, are these your verdicts and findings as announced by the court just now?
Yes.
As to all? Is that correct? All right. And A154, are these your jury, your verdict and findings as to all of the counts as just announced?
Yes.
A44, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts as just announced?
Yes.
All right. And A243, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts just announced?
Yes.
And A210, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts just announced?
Yes.
A249, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts as just announced?
Yes.
In the back, B20, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts as just announced?
Yes, sir.
A226, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts as just announced?
Yes.
A105, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts as just announced?
Yes.
A116, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts as just announced?
Yes, sir.
A124, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts as just announced? And,
A129.
all right, and juror A129, are these your verdicts and findings as to all counts just announced?
Yes.
All right. Is defense counsel satisfied with the polling?
Thank you.
The court intends to set a sentencing hearing. I will have the court's assignment commissioner work with counsel for both sides. I would like it set, I think counsel felt like maybe it would take maybe a couple of weeks to organize a sentencing memorandum. So that would make it about December 14. We have the holidays coming up, so the parameters would be between December 14 and December, whatever the last work day is before Christmas. So in that period of time, for the assignment commissioner will work with counsel in order to do that. At least 3 days before the sentencing hearing itself, I'm directing counsel for each side to file a sentencing memorandum. It doesn't have to be, and probably should not be terribly lengthy, but it should cover whatever counsel feels the court should consider, and plus the recommendations of the state and the defense concerning the sentencing. Is there anything further from counsel for the state or counsel for the defense at this time?
Your Honor, I just made this comment to the court, but I would like an opportunity to speak with the jury. I know they don't have to, and I think the court is going to instruct them that way.
Yeah.
So, but I just wanted to make that known. I don't know how else to make it known.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and this would include all of you, including the alternates, the court is not permitted to comment concerning a verdict of the jury. So nothing that I say should indicate the court's agreement with or disagreement with the verdict. That the verdicts are strictly in the prerogative of in the jurisdiction, I guess, of the jury. The court cannot comment on that, and I'm not commenting on that. However, your attentiveness and your dedication to duty have been noticed and are greatly appreciated by the court. I want to state something here for you, though, so that I make sure everybody understands this. You may understand it anyway. You are now released from the admonition not to discuss this case. You may discuss your verdict and your deliberations and your experiences as a juror with others, but you are not required to do that. You must decide for yourself whether or not you will discuss such matters. In the event, in any event, I guess I should say, whether you discuss them or not with others, you should be careful concerning what you say, whether it's to family members or discussing it with other people. You should make no statement, verbal or writing, unless you are sure that it is complete and correct. You should make no statement that you would not be willing to make under oath in the presence of the court or other jurors, or in the presence of the litigants and their respective counsel. In other words, don't just speak off the cuff and say something that you might later regret that you have said. If your statements are to the press, remember your name and your statements, or probably will use only the part that the one reporting considers sufficiently newsworthy or challenging. So just remember that. Now, as jurors, you've served as public officers, really, of the court. When you're discharged, which will be immediately, and I leave the bench, your services are completed. And you'll be receiving some compensation, not nearly enough for the work that you did, but you'll be receiving that, and it will be mailed to you. It's my understanding we're mailing that compensation to, or the county. And you have all the rights of private citizens, all right? It's the lawyer's duty to protect those rights and to protect your desire not to talk about this case, if that's your choice, if that's your decision. It is improper and unethical for a lawyer or anyone else to harass, entice, or exert improper influence to you for the purpose of getting you to talk about the case. It is your individual choice whether you talk about the case. Does counsel for the state or counsel for the defense have anything further?
No, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are discharged. Thank you. According to this trial is adjourned.
Yeah, yeah.
Time when you consider that they've been in this courtroom or on the school bus for jury view for 12 weeks now. You know, they have seen 5,000 pieces of evidence. They have heard from 60 witnesses, 10 of those being witnesses for the defense, 50 of them for the prosecution here. Valerie Lyons is in the courtroom. She was in there as that happened, and we talked a little bit about that gasp you heard on the audio as that first count came back guilty. She said it came from the side where the family was. She was sitting behind some of the family members. It came from that side of the room, and she said at that point the tears started flowing. She said the emotion was palpable in that courtroom from that moment on. And again, you know, you think it's been pent up for so long. I remember as this process started, we learned a little something about this case each day, and this case is so complex, and there are so many people, not just the fact that there are 8 victims in this case who were killed, but then all of their family members, and then you have 4 defendants in this case, 4 family members accused of planning and pulling off these murders. And one of the things I've talked about the past couple of days is this jury really had to decide who they believed, because they not only heard from Jake Wagner, who took the plea deal, and his mom, Angela, who took the plea deal. They also heard from George himself. He testified in his own defense, and it was some of the most interesting testimony we had, but it contradicted everything Jake and Angela said almost. George always maintained that he was going to be, he had no idea He was never there. He was asleep when this happened. He found out about it when BCI, the state investigators, started looking into the family. And then he got defensive about it because he thought they were being framed. Clearly, the jury didn't believe him there. They believed Jake, who pointed investigators to the murder weapons. They wouldn't have had those had Jake not confessed and told them where to find them. Jake laid everything out, and they told nothing of it to Angela. They went and talked to her 4 months later, and she told them things that Jake told them in the same way. And that's when they knew they had enough in this case. That's when they knew that George was involved. They were able to seal the deal on this with George IV, the oldest of the boys, because they knew that those two couldn't have communicated. And so that's when they said, yeah, okay, everything's buttoned up at this point. And they moved forward with this case. They offered all 4 Wagner family members at some time a plea deal. Jake took it, then Angela took it. George, now guilty. He'll be sentenced December 14th that week. And then we are expecting some new reaction here at about 6:30 tonight is what we've just learned. We are waiting at this point outside the front doors of the courthouse to get reaction from John Parker, the defense attorney in this case, or Richard Nash, the co-counsel on that, or any of those jurors who may want to talk to us. So we're going to get an update on that. But just to wrap things up for you here, 22 counts, 8 of them aggravated murder, 3 of them aggravated burglary, because they went to 4 properties, 4 homes, 3 of them they broke into and shot these 8 execution style while they slept, with the exception of 2 of them while they slept. In some cases, there were young mothers who had their babies in bed with them. They spared the babies, but they shot these young mothers in the head while they slept with their children. You think about that, and that's hard for a jury to get over as well. The state, this jury believed the state proved their case, and that George not only knew about it, that he participated in it, even though by all accounts, including his own brothers, he did not pull a trigger. We have more continuing coverage as we get ready to hear some reaction to this verdict for you. We will have that as soon as we get it. Guys.
And thank you very much, Evan. We know you will. We look forward to that. We also have a lot more news to cover, and we'll have that for you when we come back.
Your mind and anyone else who'd care to comment.
I feel sorry for him.
Why is that? Why?
Because he is human.
How do you find the humanity at a time like this when he did so much to your family?
I think we all have human in us. There's just a difference in us.
Tony, what did your mom say?
That's between us.
Okay.
Tony, this has been such a long, awful road for you all. I'm sure you're feeling a lot of emotions, but can you give us any sense of what you're feeling just right now?
A little bit of peace. We still have a long road to go. We'll get there, because we are family.
Are you hoping that this now will put pressure on Billy to plead guilty?
We can only hope.
What would you share some thoughts about your loved ones that sadly are no longer with us, because we concentrated so much on the legal proceedings? I can't even fathom. Just take a moment to talk about your loved ones.
They were human beings. Yeah, they were human beings. They're gone. Nothing we can do on this earth will ever bring them back.
Sounds like you have hope and faith that maybe you'll be reunited one day.
Well, you know, there is a judge and a jury on this earth, but there is a God. You got to believe in somebody.
George
So
Wagner
Brian,
won't
all
likely.
22 counts came back guilty.
Does the family have
We
a
are
reaction?
glad that it did come back, but you have to realize George Wagner is human. You know, they just didn't show it on that night.
George Wagner won't face the death penalty. How do you feel about that? Of some of the things that were happening and some of the things that they said about your family that came out during this trial.
Well, I think we all say things that we shouldn't say in life, and you just have to find a way to step around it and find the innocent, side of everybody.
Tony, I'm not going to mention the names of the children because that's personal to you, and that's been my tact. But the world has been watching this, praying that, the granddaughter is, your loved one is well. What can you tell us about that situation?
She is very well being taken care of.
She's turned 9 years old, right, Tony? What would you say to George Wagner IV? What message do you have to him?
It should have never happened. Should have never
Right.
happened.
Never.
If he really loved his child, it should have never happened.
And he said he loved
Tony,
Hannah
you guys
too.
have been in almost every one of these for 4 years now that we've been here.
Yes.
I guess how have you gotten through coming here to each of these hearings and sitting there and watching?
It's family. If you have family support, you can make it.
We hang on to each other. That's right.
Yes.
He won't face the death penalty. How do you feel about that?
Tony,
That's a tough one.
Yep.
I can't answer that.
Sorry,
when
given
Jake
what-
testified earlier in the trial, apparently he looked at the family and said, "I'm sorry." What was your reaction to that?
Sorry for what? For being not human? Fell on deaf ears.
how difficult, Tony, was it for you all to sit there and watch him talk about this in such a cavalier fashion?
I believe you can answer that yourself. You was there. Most of you was there.
Talk about Geneva a little bit. Been through this, been through a lot. How's she doing now? How's she coping?
That's the rock.
She's holding up great.
That's the rock.
She's awesome.
She's the one got us this far.
Yep.
Tony,
Her and Judy.
Tony, what's something
And-
that gives you hope right now?
Andrea.
Yeah. The question: what's something that gives you hope right now? What gives you hope right now?
We're one step closer.
Tony, what's in your heart right now?
A little bit of peace. A little bit of peace.
What do you mean one step closer, Tony? One step closer. Meaning there's one more to go, Billy Wagner, or what?
Well, we have to do that. We have to do that. I think as a victim, you have to take those steps. You all know that.
I think as we all listen to you, I have a sense that you're just gracious. You just seem like a very peaceful, gracious person.
That's just who he is.
Yeah. Which
He's
I think
the
is a lot
reasonable
more
one of
than a
us.
lot of us could say from a lot of people we know.
Like I said, a lot of it is your upbringing and the people around you and family that you believe in. And if you have that, you can be at peace.
This is really our first chance to hear from you and the whole family. It's so enormous for any of us to get our minds around what happened. That's the reality. But you're living it. Do you, as Christmas, will you just be able to kind of be still a little bit more easily? And you've lost so much, I can't even fathom. So nobody can, but you're living this nightmare. What is that like?
We just want to be left alone and enjoy our family during the holidays. Which is what everybody wants to do.
Might you say anything about the investigation and the prosecution team? It seems as though there was a bond there.
They all done a wonderful job. We'd never be here without them.
They've done a great job.
It's been 6.5 years
Yes.
with them, so we are
Yes.
very close.
And most of you have been around them too.
What would you like to say to the jury?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a tough burden.
Yeah.
None of us can say what they dealt with.
What does the
It's
day
tough
mean
burden.
to Chris Sr., to Dana, to Hannah, to Chris Jr., to Gary, to Kenneth, Frank?
A little bit of peace. A little bit of peace.
They can rest in peace?
Not yet.
Not yet. No, not yet.
Not yet.
Got one more to go, right?
Got one more to go?
Tony, just really, I was surprised, maybe not surprised, but you guys are very gracious. You're talking about you have humanity, you're a human, that George is a human. Where does that come from? You said upbringing.
The lady that's standing in that building. That's where it comes from.
Your mom.
She's a rock.
Because it'd be real easy to be just mad and angry and everything else, and I don't sense that you all have that in your hearts. And that's
You
incredible.
didn't see that.
Yeah,
You didn't see that.
you've been very stoic and just handle it as it comes, right?
Yes.
You've also
How
been
many
incredibly
days?
patient. Where does that come from? You learn to be patient.
What's the alternative?
You have to believe in somebody. You know, I mean, if you don't believe in the people that's trying to prosecute this, you have to believe in somebody.
Well, let's ask to that point, and we won't belabor it. I know you guys you'll be done with this, but to Chris's point, walk us back for a minute because everyone wanted. I did a story about the Mexican cartel doing it in Cincinnati, wondering what had happened. What was it like those first couple of years before the arrest, where you just had no idea, presumably?
It's like if you would go rabbit hunting. You know, sometimes a rabbit will run in a hole and then he'll jump back out and run again. And that's what the investigators were doing.
Yeah.
So it was very frustrating. But you have to believe.
Tony, what happened tonight for the family? Just talk about tonight. What happened tonight? What do you guys do tonight?
Where's the party?
We're gonna go home. We're gonna go home. Enjoy our family.
Yep.
All
We'll sleep
the
a little
entire family?
easier tonight.
The entire family?
We're gonna go home and enjoy our family.
And sleep a little easier,
There's
like
one
you
thing
said.
that we don't take for granted anymore is we love the ones we got and never let go. Because you never know what.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, sir.
Could we get the names? That's April, and this is
April, do you want to say anything
Angela
else?
and Tony, and after Tony is his daughter,
No, that's his niece.
and name is.
Where'd she go? Sorry, you'll have to
Thank
ask
you,
her.
ladies.
Thank
Do you
you.
want me to
Yeah.
grab her?
Family rest in peace yet? And they said not yet, because Billy, the dad, Billy Wagner, still to face trial in these murders.
And the family holding on to their faith, and they are remaining, one of the reporters are referencing, very stoic and just very calm, and they're dealing with it, but they are looking to their faith in some of this. And one thing that was interesting, and part of this, when George Wagner IV had come into the courtroom at one point, he had turned to the family and mouthed, "I'm sorry."
I'm sorry.
And so, Tony Rhoden Sr. there was asked about that, and you may have heard that, and he said, "Sorry for what? Being not human?" And the family obviously, while they're celebrating today, this trial is not over. The situation's not over because we still have another case to go.
Still another case to go. We'll have to wait and see what happens in that particular case. In this case, Billy Wagner IV, guilty on all 24 counts. So we have much more to get to, and that includes the weather. So we know we're making a real hard turn here, but we know that a lot of you are patiently waiting to hear what's going to happen tonight into tomorrow.
Absolutely. Chief Meteorologist Steve Raleigh has been putting the latest data together. We are going to get back to our breaking news coverage out in Pike County, but for those of you in this area, let's get you updated on the forecast situation. Steve?
Yeah, guys, right now a lot of clouds have been just dissipating through the morning hours, and now we're all clear. Things are going to stay clear tonight and going into tomorrow. Frontal system off to the east of us, now allowing all of that very cold
and that he will be punished, as will his brother Jake and his mother Angela. I want to thank the jury. They've made a great sacrifice. This has certainly been one of the longest, if not the longest, trials in Ohio history. They hung in there, they did their job, they did their civic duty, and we're grateful for their work. I also want to thank Special Prosecutors Angie Canepa and Andy Wilson and Pike County Prosecutor Rob Junk. They sacrificed a great deal, time from their families, time from their regular work to get the job done. They are highly talented trial lawyers, highly talented trial prosecutors, and the quality of their work has been exceptional. We are grateful for the thousands of hours that they have poured into this case to see that there would, in fact, be justice. And on a personal note, we will be happy to welcome Andy Wilson back to the governor's office. I also want to thank all law enforcement that was involved in this very difficult and complicated case. I want to thank the BCI agents, the investigators, the analysts, forensic scientists, and crime victim advocates. They solved these crimes. They assisted the family. They helped uncover nearly 5,000 pieces of evidence. They put this case together. They figured out what at times seemed like such an implausible motive, the custody of a child for the murder of 8 innocent people. But they did it. They did it. They are true professionals. They really combined old-fashioned police work with modern technology, again, to solve a very difficult case. To the Rhoden and Gilly families, I just want to say that you have always remained in my thoughts. You have remained in my thoughts, as have your loved ones who were murdered. I know that many of you spent days in the courtroom, day after day, watching the trial and waiting for this moment. You never gave up, you never lost faith, and today you're one step closer to having final justice. In the days ahead, George Wagner will get sentenced, and Billy Wagner's fate will also be determined. And I will remain steadfast in my belief that everyone who is involved in these murders will get what they deserve. Happy to take questions.
Are you surprised that it took as long as it did to investigate this case over 6 years?
No. The question is, was I surprised that it took so long to investigate the case? If you'll recall, the question I usually got from the media when I was the Attorney General was whether or not we would ever solve the case. From the day of the murder to the day we announced the indictments, I remained convinced that we would solve this case, these cases. It took a while, but I was confident that justice would be served, we would be able to solve the case. Again, it's a tribute to the law enforcement people who were involved in this investigation. There's never been, to my knowledge, a more complicated or lengthy investigation by BCI, ever. And they hung in there. They did not give up. They stayed with it, and they got the job done. So no, I was always convinced that we were going to be able to do that. You know, I think, speaking of time, this jury was only out, 7 or 8 hours in a very long trial. And I think that says something. I can't speak for the jury. They can speak for themselves, but I think it says something to the overwhelming evidence that was presented by the prosecutors.
How satisfying is it for you and your team to see this all the way through from when you were Attorney
Yeah, well, the question is, how satisfying is it to see this day? Look, it's very satisfying. We're not done yet. There's one more trial, obviously. But yes, this is something that, for a number of years as the Attorney General of this state, I lived with this case. And we spent a lot of time analyzing it. And when we started, as I described it at the time, when my experiences, going back to my days as a prosecutor, is when, you have bodies that are found and nothing else. Those are just always difficult cases. And again, my hat goes off to the BCI, the other investigators, everyone involved in this case, because they never gave up. They stayed with it, and they really combined just old-fashioned hard work, gut-wrenching police work with some modern technology, and those things coming together really made the difference, and that's why we're here today. And I would say something else, that, in regard to the three prosecutors that I mentioned, all three of them, were directly involved in the investigation itself. They were there all the way through, and that's why, we felt it was so important that they try the case. Andy Wilson still works for the governor, but it was important for he go off and try this case. Rob Junk is the prosecutor who's been with this case all the way through. Angie Canepa, there's no finer trial lawyer, no finer prosecutor than Angie Canepa, and she lived with this case, as did the other two, all the way through. And that's why it was so very important that they be the ones that actually try the case. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you.
the order of appearance, honey?
What's that?
Did you get the order of appearance?
I did. I did.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Junk, and I'm the Public Information Officer for the Pike County EMA, and I stepped up to help with the press conference tonight because it's kind of my thing. I would like to introduce to you Prosecutor Rob Junk, Special Prosecutor Angie Canepa, Special Prosecutor Andrew Wilson. We have Timothy Dickerson down on the end. He is the Pike County EMA Director, and he was one of the assisting investigators from the Pike County Sheriff's Office. We have Major Al Lewis, who was also investigative lead from the Pike County Sheriff's Office, and Ryan Scheiderer, who is the BCI lead in the investigations on the case. So I will hand it over to Rob.
Thank you. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And obviously it's been a long, about 11 weeks. And first I'd like to express my greatest sympathy to the Manley, Rhoden, and Gilly families. They stuck with us through the whole investigation, through the whole trial. We don't get that level of cooperation. I apologize. From every victim's family we deal with, and I just want to say we appreciate everything you have done for us and sticking with us. Good won today and evil lost. I want to thank our prosecution team, right, Angela Canepa and Andrew Wilson. They spent many, many long hours, a lot of work and teamwork, and finally culminated in a Pike County jury making the right decision today to all the charges in this case, every single one of them. And I thank you for everything you've done to help me with this case. Neither of you had to come in and help, but you did, and I appreciate that, and I thank you. I want to thank Governor Mike DeWine. He was our Attorney General when this case started. He never let us down. He helped with us through everything. We appreciate everything he's done for us, the resources. The Attorney General got the case started. He stuck with us, and he believed with us. Also want to thank Attorney General Dave Yost for providing BCI to us. There are several BCI agents here. I'm going to introduce them here in a little bit. They're hiding in the back of the room. I want to say a thank you to them with BCI and the Attorney General's help. They are the reason that we won this case. I do want to thank our county commissioners, Tony Montgomery, Jerry Miller, and Jeff Chatton. They supported us from the beginning. If we needed money, if something had to be funded for the local end of this, they did it. We are a poor county. We are still a poor county, as you've probably seen here, but we've got a lot of good people here. I'd like to thank the special agents, analysts, and forensic scientists at BCI who spent literally years working on this case. They never gave up, ever. I can speak to my left for Special Agent Ryan Scheider. He was the lead agent on the case. He had to cut short vacations, give up vacations, thing like that. He was the lead agent on our case. He did everything. He and his team are the reason we're able to be here today. So Ryan, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And some of you are hiding back there. I'm going to maybe move a little bit there, but some of our investigation team is here. And all the way in the back, I want to recognize Criminal Intelligence Analyst Julia Eversley. Let us know who you are. And to her left, my right, would be Criminal Intelligence Analyst Dana Forney. Then Special Agent Jenny Congsford. Special Agent John Jenkins. Special Agent Jim Mulford. And Special Agent Shane Hanshaw. You may recognize several of them from their testimony in this case. And I think it's nice having people like that you can put on the stand. They know what to say. They know how to present evidence. They know more than just gathering evidence. Part of it is being able to present it, and that is what they did. Also want to recognize a couple other people here from Pike County Sheriff's Office, and we have our hiding in the back there, and say something, Sheriff Evans. We got the Pike County Sheriff, Tracy Evans, is here. He was actually a major at the Pike County Sheriff's Office when this case came up. But up here in front, I've got two gentlemen with us here to Ryan's left. Al Lewis, retired major from the Pike County Sheriff's Office. He was with the investigation through the whole time. We've got now our Emergency Management Director, Tim Dickerson. Tim was a major at the time. Both these gentlemen were assigned to the case, worked long and hard hours. Tim ended up becoming the Emergency Management Director, but both these guys spent long hours assisting BCI. They were the local component in this case. And again, as a small county, there is no way we would have been able to do this alone. No way at all. Again, I just can't thank everybody enough for pitching in. You have BCI, sheriff's offices, and there are plenty of other sheriffs out there too that pitched in. I remember being out on the scenes. There were sheriff's offices, law enforcement agencies from all over Ohio that pitched in to help us. And we thank you for that. There's also a lot of other people, again, sheriff's deputies, special agents, other analysts, forensic scientists that you didn't see testify, but were equally vital to the case. With a case like this, you see the people up in court testifying. You see us as the prosecutors, but there's also a lot of people out there that put a heck of a lot of time in this case that you didn't see. I want to give a thanks to them too. It's kind of like you go out to maybe a concert or some public event. You see the people up there speaking, but you don't see the people that put it together, that do the nuts and bolts, like the sound and the things like that. It's this same way with a case like this. It truly was a team effort. This is exactly what can happen when agencies work together to do the right thing and to get justice. And also, too, I'd be remiss not to thank our jury members for their time, dedication, and their willingness to serve. This, I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, has been the longest criminal trial in Pike County history, if not the state of Ohio history. My longest trial before this case was a homicide trial, but it lasted 5 days. Most of my homicide trials in the past have been 5 days, and this eclipses that by just about 10 weeks. But the thing is slowly but surely, never lost sight of the goal. And again, good one out today and evil lost. Thank you. I'd like to turn everything over to Angie. You're up now.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. I want to start with the victim's family. You know, it's been a long time, and I feel like we've grown to be practically family. I tried hard during openings and closings to do my best to bring to life your family that was killed, and I just want to mention them. You know, Gary and Chris, Hannah Hazel, Frankie, Hannah Mae, little Chris, Dana, Kenneth. As I said in my opening and my close, there was no reason for them to die. No reason for them to die. And I have to say that when we were doing jury selection, and I think I shared this with some of you, it really brought them to life for me, because there were so many people in the community that knew your loved ones and talked so fondly about them. And I just want you guys to know that. That was not a part of the trial that was covered, so a lot of the other people didn't get to see that, but it meant so much to me and to the others. I also would like to thank our investigative team, both here and in the back, and others that aren't here, but frankly, the ones that are here are pretty much the core of the people that really fought hard for this case and fought for it from day one, even when a whole lot of people thought that we would never be able to get to where we are now. And of course, I would like to echo Rob's comments about the family. You guys have trusted us with your lives and the lives of your loved ones. And I know today's verdict does not bring your loved ones back. I know that. But I do hope that it gives you some semblance of peace that yet another one of the evil monsters that did this to your family has been held accountable. Also like to thank Rob, because he also put his faith in me and made it possible for me to stay on this case even after I left the Attorney General's office. He fought hard. I know I had the support of the family as well that helped with that as well, and Special Agent Scheider also helped with that. But thank you, Rob, very much for fighting for me, and obviously Andy for coming on board. I think I tricked him into coming on board, but I think it was a good steal on my part. So, yeah. So, and we personally thanked the jury and hugged each one of them because, you know, their attention was steadfast and they carefully considered everything and came up with the right verdict. So, thank you.
I'm Andy Wilson. First of all, to the family, I want to echo what both Rob and Angie said. Thank you for putting your trust in us. You know, we just can't imagine. Nobody in this room, nobody watching this can imagine the pain and the suffering that you've had to go through. And we had the ability to watch you over the last couple of months as we laid out the evidence of what had happened to your family members. And I just can't imagine being in your shoes, how incredibly difficult to hear and see that story, how difficult it must have been. And you handled yourself with grace, you handled yourself with dignity, and you handled yourself with restraint. And I will be forever amazed at your ability to do that. And really what you did is you represented your family well. And under conditions like this, there's just not much more that you could do. And I'm sure they would be so proud of the fact that you stood vigilant for them through this process. I also have to, again, like Rob and Angie, thank the investigators. As you saw, as everybody saw, as we laid out this case, the strength of this presentation was solely on the backs of the work that the analysts, the investigators, and the scientists at BCI did. We do not get here today without their tenacity, without their dedication. They never gave up. They believed in the case from day one. They ran down every lead, and through their hard work, they were able to obtain some measure of justice. So again, I've never seen in my entire career in law enforcement and prosecution, I've never seen an investigation that has been done this well, that was this complex, and that the folks who were involved in the trenches were so dedicated to. I also would like to thank the people of Pike County. You know, Angie and I, actually a lot of the investigators, a lot of the team who worked on this case were not from Pike County. And we've had the opportunity to really live down here for the last couple of months as Pike County residents, pretty much. And I've been so impressed with the people of Pike County. First of all, the court staff and just the logistics that it takes to present a case like this. Especially, we didn't have much of a support team. So the logistics that it took to make sure that we were able to present our exhibits when we needed to present them. We were able to accommodate our witnesses and get everybody in and out. It was absolutely unbelievable what this small county was able to provide for us. And again, Rob opened up his checkbook for the office. Anything we needed, we got. anything that was necessary for us to do the presentation of this case, both Rob, the county commissioners, and the court staff accommodated. So it was really kind of amazing, given the small team that we had. And then again, the people of Pike County, man, hardworking, blue collar, great people. And they supported us across the board. And again, I think it was really evident in the jury. You know, if you look at that jury, they paid attention from beginning to end. And it was tedious at times, it was long, but they were engaged throughout the whole process. And because of their attention, because of their dedication to their civic duty, they were able to return a just verdict. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Governor Mike DeWine. You know, when he was Attorney General, he believed in this case. From day one, he believed that the investigators were going to find who was responsible for this and that they were going to bring him to justice. And he never gave up. Even after he left the Attorney General's office, when Pike County needed help and needed extra support, he was willing to pitch in. And he dedicated the resources of Department of Public Safety, Tom Stickrath over there, Public Safety. Again, anything we needed. He had his IT guy down here bringing us printers and some computer stuff that we needed back in October. So the dedication of the governor and his administration to ensure that justice was done, again, helped get us to this day. So with that, I think who's next? Al? Yep.
Excuse me. I'm Alan Lewis. I'm a retired major from the Pike County Sheriff's Office and 23 Major Crimes Task Force. I got called the first day whenever it occurred and worked this case all the way through. First of all, the family, my heart's always goes out to you. I can't stress enough that, you know, your support. When we were low, I was wondering if we was ever going to work our way through this. You guys supported us. Appreciate that. And I wish Wilma was here. Yeah, Wilma's my buddy. But thank all of you, and my hearts will always go out to you. There was nothing more a team effort than this case. I can't stress that enough from day one. I was lucky enough to partner up with BCI and Agent Ryan Scheider over here, and what a partner. You know, we complimented each other a lot on the way we worked, and then there was also some days we didn't compliment each other. But lucky to have him on the case, and all these people in the back, you know, from BCI, the Pike County Sheriff's Office, Ross County, 23 Major Crimes Task Force, Pickaway County. I mean, I can't stress enough what a team effort this was, that everyone pulled together and worked this case. And then the prosecutors, you know, Rob, Angie, Andy. I don't know, the late night conversations that Angie and I'd have, we would call wanting warrants and different things. And we all went to Alaska. I made 2 trips to Alaska following them around. And I just can't, you can't express the magnitude of an investigation of this and this group that we had. I mean, they're truly, the old saying, there's no I in team, and that's what this was. This team was unbelievable. And, you know, we come through it. We've got one more to go, and he's next. And we're going to win that one too. But once again, you know, the family, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry we had to meet this way. I want to echo what Andy said about, you know, Governor Mike DeWine. At the time he was over BCI, Attorney General, Tom Stickrath. We met for months, for a while it was weekly. And whatever we needed, they got us. And an investigation like that, that's the type of help and backing that we needed. So they've always will have my support because they gave it to us when we needed it. And I just want to thank all of you and all of you in the back and everyone around this room. So thank you so much.
My name's Tim Dickerson. I was a major at the time and one of the first responders to the scene. I was only advised a few hours ago that I was asked to speak, and I appreciate it very much. To the family, this is your day, and I hope it provides some relief. And I just want to thank Special Prosecution. I'm going to leave somebody out. My friend and colleagues Ryan and Al, and all the BCI agents and law enforcement officers in the back for allowing me the privilege to serve alongside them and help the day come about in my small way. Thank you.
Yeah. Could we?
Can the investigative team come up?
Yeah.
Come
on
You're
up,
hiding in the
guys.
back.
Yeah, don't hide. Don't hide. Be proud of what you're doing.
Star witness Julia F. Dana. Jenny. Special Agent Jenkins, and Mulford, and Hanshaw. Yeah, sorry.
Give these gentlemen and ladies a round of applause for their work. And at this time, I believe the prosecution team will entertain some questions.
Rob, a lot of times.
Let me get up here where you can get my voice here.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I will try and answer your questions. If I can't, there's people up here that are way smarter than me that could probably give you the right answer. Yes, sir.
As prosecutors.
Yes.
A lot of times in your line of work, your job is to speak for people who can no longer speak for themselves.
Absolutely.
What does it mean to you and this team to get to today for the 8 members of this family whose voices were violently silenced?
It'd be fair to say their voices were heard today. As you can tell, it still kind of gets to me. I'm normally not like this, but justice was done. And again, they heard the voices of our 8 victims today. The jury listened. They understood. And in some small way, we can never, ever, ever bring them back. But I can tell you that, good Lord willing, George Wagner IV will never be in a position to hurt anyone ever, ever again.
Are you going to be asking for the same kind of sentence for him that Jake got, life in prison without parole? I mean, I know that we still have to go through pre-sentencing and everything else. What are you looking for?
Okay, at this point, I really can't comment on that. This is going to sound kind of weird. I'm kind of like bound by a couple of things. The case is still pending. Obviously, we're not allowed to talk about pending issues. I will say this, you have an individual that went through a trial. I think everyone can make a pretty fair assumption as to what the jurors thought of his testimony, and I should probably just leave it at that. But there will be a sentencing set. We don't know the date yet. The judge wants to give everybody a chance to catch calendars and those type of things. But yeah, I would love to answer that question for you, and you could probably figure out what I would probably say, but I'm just not allowed to answer it.
What do you make of how quickly the jury came back? I mean, after 10 plus weeks of testimony, 7 hours seems quick. Perhaps it does not to you. But
For a case like this, and I'll also defer to co-counsel as well, it was pretty quick.
what do you make of that? What does that mean?
I was going to say it. But some of the questions they asked, they're obviously going through the charges, but they saw. I hesitate to use the word mountain of evidence, but Ryan and his team had a huge amount of evidence that all of us put on. I think that had something to do with it, and if they were impressed by George Wagner IV's testimony, it did not show in their verdicts.
As a follow-up to that,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to get all 3 of you to answer that. When they called his name to the stand, what was your reaction?
By the time they called him to the stand, we pretty much expected it. You know, we could sense that that was what was going to happen, and I think they didn't really have a choice at that point, you know, because they had not been able to rebut the evidence that we had put on, I think, at that point. So I think they only had that option.
And I know Andy mentioned this in his closing yesterday, but some people were asking why not play the tape of him to contradict himself. Why not play the tape of him in Montana?
Yep.
You guys want to talk about that? Why you made that strategic decision not to play that? And was it so he couldn't cater his testimony to that?
Right. So, correct. And Mr. Wilson did cover this. We made that decision because we didn't want to put his defense on for him, you know, because he denied that his family and him did this, you know, throughout that interview. Of course, he said some things in that interview that were completely opposite of the things he said on the stand. So by not playing his statement, you put him in a position where he pretty much has the only choice of getting on the stand if he wants to present his defense, and that gives us an opportunity to expose his untruths, right? So, you know, he admitted to saying the things that I was crossing him on, so I didn't have to play it, you know, but I just pointed out the discrepancies between what he was saying. And
Agent Scheider, you want to talk about your team and?
Actually, one of us will have to speak on Agent Scheider this evening. The three of us, Major Lewis, Major Dickerson, will try our best to answer any investigative questions we can.
Might you comment on the contributions of the testimony of George Wagner's mother and brother? How did that play into the case in your estimation?
well, I would think, I mean, actually the jury, you know, when a mother comes in and says that her son was involved in a crime of this magnitude, you know, it is not going to be common that a mother would come in and say that her son did something that they didn't actually do, right? It's more likely that they would come in and say he didn't do something that he did. So I think that clearly had a huge impact on the jury. I mean, I think they obviously.
Not to look too far ahead, and I know this is a big moment, but obviously it's been mentioned, Billy Wagner is still pleading not guilty. Andy, are you going to stick with the prosecution team, or are you going back to the governor's office? Angie, what are your plans? I mean, how is this going to progress? I know Mr. Junk is going to become the judge. How does this all play out in the next 2 months?
Look, I think we need to just get through tonight.
Right.
We need to enjoy this moment.
Yeah.
And just after tonight, we'll sit down and we'll come up with our war game for how we're going to do next.
I can say I'm not going anywhere.
No. Unfortunately, like, yeah. Definitely.
Andrew,
You're on to Lisa.
Andy, you all spoke about how you've grown close to the family over the last several years and during the trial as well. But can you speak to whenever the verdict is being read, we're all looking at family members to see how they're reacting and at the defendant as well. But I'm sure for you that may have been an emotional experience as well. Can you talk about what you were thinking and feeling as the verdict was read?
Obviously, as you can tell, like, I'm still a bit emotional. I'm normally not that way. I'm one of these people that, like, pride myself on, like, not getting, you know, not breaking down over anything. But this case is a little bit different. I tell you, he's working with our family members, and then then some of the things that we saw and everything like that, we're never going to talk about. There's a lot that you did not see that like that. It affects you, and just getting the jury guilty verdicts. When the first one came in, you know, we got you. You probably the wrong thing to say, but you know what? I'm from Pike County. I'm going to talk like I'm from Pike County. I'm not going to hide it. So that's exactly what went through my mind. I was relieved, but just still, like, never thought this day would ever happen. Again, really, really long trial. Just there's still a lot of things to process on it. Again, the jury did the right thing. Good one.
Was there ever a point in the investigation, when you talked about the investigation, you walked us through every single step, and even Agent Scheider testified as to when they officially really became in the crosshairs and suspects?
Yes, sir.
But from the prosecution's team perspective, was there ever a moment that you thought, okay, these guys are the ones who really did it? I mean, was there one piece of evidence that said, okay, that tipped the scales for you from being suspects to being, okay, these are our guys?
Yeah, go ahead, Angie.
I mean, I would say it was probably about the same time the investigative team thought that, which was probably, I mean, yeah, September of 16
Yeah.
is when we, thought that, and then, kind of as he said, you try to rule them in or rule them out, and every page that we turned ruled them in more, so every little piece of evidence, you start getting the financial records and seeing these purchases, and, and it culminates in finding a silencer in the well, but all through that, every single time, it just was like more and more and more, once we started. I wish we would have figured it out sooner, certainly, but I would say,
Finding the shell casing in the
Yeah.
driveway, then you find, turns out matches one and two.
Yep. Oh, that was that point for me. I can remember when Al gave me a call. I'm trying to remember what I was doing, but he was like, "You're not going to believe this," and then told me about the collected and matched to the ones at the scene.
Oh, which,
thinking,
yeah.
got him.
And then of course, when Ms. Everslade found the receipt for the Walmart
Yep.
shoes,
That's
I think there was lots of hugging that day, and
Yep.
maybe some crying as well, because that was just another big moment.
Take us back to the very beginning, the first day that this happened.
See if
Yeah.
I have the 11.
Do you mind moving over to the podium?
Yeah. Go ahead and grab that, Al.
Apparently I'm in boxes, so I don't know.
What did you think you had?
Yeah, I've been sworn law enforcement officer since '81, and this wasn't my first homicide scene by all.
Check,
but
check, check, 1, 2, 3.
I've never been on
Hello,
anything of
check,
this
check, check, 1, 2,
magnitude.
3. Check, check, 1,
And